So, gentlemen, why don't we set the stage for our discussion today by your telling us a bit about your districts? And Oliver, you want to kick off?
Sure. The Shenendehowa Central School District, we're a relatively large suburban school for New York State standards. We have about 9,800 students, described mainly as, I would say, middle class, more affluent socioeconomic status. We're located in Saratoga County, which is the capital region area of upstate New York. Shenendehowa, as the name implies, is Native American. So all of our buildings have Iroquois words as names of their building. Shenendehowa itself meaning Great Plains. We have 12 schools, 9 of which are on a campus, a 232-acre campus, and we have 4 schools off campus. And our budget for the district is about $163 million. We're a district with 7 board members serving 3-year terms. And fond of saying that Shen is the big fish in the small pond in upstate New York.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm in Virginia Beach, Virginia, the Virginia Beach City Public School Division. We are a district located in the beautiful southeastern part of Virginia, right on the coast there, as our name implies. We are a school division of 68,000 students. We have 86 schools. We operate on a budget of about $700 million, and we have 11 board members. One of the interesting parts about our school division is that we are home to a large military presence. We have two significant naval installations as well as some Army installations in our city proper, and of course adjacent to us is the Norfolk Naval Station, which is the largest naval installation on the East Coast. So about 30% of our students are military students, military connected.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Now let's get to the main topic today, what you've done in your districts to help your board become more cohesive governing teams. And as we all know, that's a real challenge in K-12 education. So we want the benefit of your practical experience in building board governing teams. And Aaron, why don't you tell us what you've done?
Absolutely. I look at the question 2 ways. It's what do I do to help create that culture of cohesiveness, and then also how do our board members do that work together. So I think a number of things, some of them will certainly make sense to everybody, and then some of them maybe are different or unique. One of the things we obviously do is spend a lot of time talking together as a group, and so we have semi-annual retreats where we review board goals, try to establish what it is that we're working towards for the next 6 months, and making sure we're reviewing progress on our strategic plan for the division, which is called Compass to 2020. In addition to those retreats, obviously, in the time in between, you want to make sure that you have a great deal of communication and transparency. I provide a weekly update to our board, which talks about the goings-on in the division, progress that we're making towards those goals that we've talked about. It also talks about things like which board members I've met with that week. I think one of the things that undermines cohesiveness is if some board members feel like they're out of the communication loop while others are in. So I like to make sure all of our board members know who I'm talking with and when, and that I'm sharing the same information with everybody. I think there's other things that we can do as well. I think one of the key undertakings of this last year for us was a revision of our school board handbook, and really asking our board to go through and look at those practices that were important in terms of governance practices, obligations of board members, roles and responsibilities of board members, roles and responsibilities of staff, and really having some meaty dialogue around it in our last retreats to come to some consensus about how should a board behave as a corporate body, and then recognizing that you also have individuals with unique interests and constituencies. How can I help support them in their role there and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate in that role. So I think those are probably some of the key things that we do. Obviously, another thing is to meet regularly with each of the board members to set up ongoing times to sit down and just hear their concerns, and let them ask questions about things they've heard about around the division, and make sure that each board member feels like his or her needs are being attended to. Obviously, in our school division, we have 11 board members, so it's a lot to do that, but I think it's time well spent.
Let me throw in a follow-up question, Aaron. Do you have much informal time together as a group? For example, a lunch or before a board meeting or that kind of thing? Are you able to do that?
We do some of that. The board intentionally schedules some social gatherings during the year, typically as we head into the holiday season and as we head into the summer, but also before board meetings. After we have a workshop scheduled before all of our board meetings, and between the workshop and the formal meeting, our board does try to get together for dinner just to have some informal conversation, check in with one another, and build those relationships.
Good. Oliver, why don't you weigh in?
Sure. I think in many ways, while our districts are different in terms of size, a lot of similarities in terms of how we approach governance and fostering of board teamwork. And for us, I firmly, as superintendent, I see that the success of our school district hinges on the functionality, if you will, of the board, and the relationship between board members as well as the relationship between the board and myself. So subsequently, board relations and board functionality is a priority focus for me as superintendent. And I'm very fortunate that for the past 10 plus years here at Shenendehowa, I've had very functional boards, different board members over the years, but very functional boards. And a key to that is, in many ways, the reputation that we have established as a school district. Our mantra of commitment to excellence plays out in everything that we do. And therefore, people who run for and are elected to the board, in many cases, are coming on board wanting to be a part of to contribute to the positive environment, to be a part of the winning team. So that's a real push for us as a system to talk about how do we unify our focus. How do we look at the synergy of our efforts? And so when board members new people come on the board, they're indoctrinated, if you will, into that type of environment. So functionality becomes a major priority for them as well. And that type of reciprocal nature in terms of people want to be a winning team, want to be a part of a winning team, want to contribute to the winning team, makes it a lot easier for us to have conversations about board development in the same way we would have conversations about professional development for teachers. And similar to Aaron, we have a board retreat every year that covers not only what I call the basic governance topics, but also get into those comprehensive deliberations about, our goals for the year. What are the things that we really want to do, and what are the things we invest into doing very well? So that's a big part of the initial part of the conversation. For new board members, we take them through a very extensive orientation, because we recognize that while people have the desire to be on the board, in many cases this is their first time being on any board, and certainly school boards are very different, I would say, from, say, being a board of a private enterprise. And so we take them through a very extensive orientation, meeting with the attorney, meeting with district level administrators, because we want to make sure people understand, one, the policies and practices that the Board of Education approves, but also we want to contextualize their roles and responsibilities within the larger context of what we do as an educational institution, and how their role impacts those things. And so that's a big part of it. A unique thing here for us that has been very positive is that board members serve as liaison on various building and district level committees. And that's a great opportunity for them to see firsthand how things actually play out, how a resolution that's passed at the board table translate into action. And so that appreciation then lends to that the continued focus on functionality and recognizing that if there's a dysfunction or concern at the board level, there's implication or negative implication in terms of how we carry those things out from an administrative perspective, because we really try to highlight how those things, when they play out positively, so board members can see that as well. One thing that I try to do to ensure that communications are clear and frequent with the board, I create a year at a glance. So right now, board members can see what presentations we'll be focused on in June. And a lot of those presentations are focused on our district goals. So again, they approve a set of district goals, but we want to show them how these goals translate into various initiatives and actions throughout the school year. So we establish a bunch of presentations on a calendar. It takes out the guesswork out of things, because one of the functionality pieces that when board members aren't guessing and wondering what's coming down the pike, it's easier for them to really then feel empowered that they're part of the process and not simply from the outside looking in.
Let me throw a quick question in, if I may.
Sure.
Oliver. I don't think you mentioned the number of board members you
Yes,
have. Aaron said 11.
I have 7 board members.
7, okay.
We have 7 board members, and board members typically serve 3-year terms. And so on any given year, I have 2 or 3 board members potentially changing.
And I think you said that you really do welcome interaction between board members and your administrators, your senior executives.
That for us, the interaction with board and staff, and I'm just going to generalize staff because it's through our board liaison model. Every school has what we call a partnership team. And that partnership team is made up of board members, community members, business members, staff, administration, and student. So those teams are kind of drive some of the shared decision-making processes within our system. So board members have that opportunity to do so as well, in addition to presentations. One of the things that we're very careful about, and it's certainly it's a decision that the board itself wanted, was to make sure that there was a clear understanding between the board's role in governance and the administrative role in application of those policies. And so to avoid the micromanaging that sometimes come about when those distinctions aren't very clear. So the board spends a lot of time talking about how they even govern themselves as a board, and that comes in some of the retreat conversation that the board has as well. But to even keep the board in the loop even more so, every Friday, similar to what Aaron mentioned, every Friday the board receives an update from me. It doesn't matter if I'm in the district or out of the district, and in some cases just a simple email to outline 1 or 2 issues or pending events or calendar items that might be upcoming, but just to keep them in the information loop. So therefore we avoid the surprise element of people hearing about things that they probably should have heard from me but didn't, and subsequently then start drawing suppositions and negative suppositions. So that information sharing and constant communication is a key part of that piece of it. The transparency is a key part of it. And just to kind of cap this whole thing off, our board itself just this past year went through an entire process of discussing publicly how do they as a board communicate more effectively, and how do they as a board use technology to communicate more effectively. So again, that speaks to the larger focus of not only how do I communicate with the board, how the board communicate with me, but also how do we communicate with the public.
Well, you fellows are clearly enthusiastic team builders on the governing front. Why don't we close by just talking about the challenges you see ahead. What kinds of issues are you grappling with now in terms of team building, and what have you targeted as some initiatives going forward? And Oliver will let you begin, and then you toss the ball to Aaron.
I think that it's an ongoing challenge. It's the ongoing challenge of keeping board members willing to participate in board professional development initiatives. Because we certainly believe that when We study together as a body, as a board and administration. We can make progress. So that's an ongoing piece for us. A piece for us also is how do we better take advantage of technology. Recently we went paperless for board meetings and have a few board members who are coming along slower than anticipated. So how do we continue to take advantage of technology is a big part of that piece of it. And with that comes then how do we control the technology? How do we avoid having electronic meetings by having people sending countless emails and responding to each other, and which translate to a meeting. So those are some of the challenges that we face right now, immediate challenges we face right now in terms of that. And all those speaks to the constant need to ensure there's a healthy balance between governance and administrative roles and responsibility.
Aaron, why don't you bring us to the finish line here? Tell us what you see on the horizon.
Yeah, well, I think I would echo what Oliver said about, I think one of the key challenges is to constantly refine the board's understanding of the balance between administration and governance. With elected school boards, you have elections, you have new members coming on, you have changes in leadership. And so I think you have to be open to, as been talked about, a clear process of orientation, just being really open about what are the roles and responsibilities of the individual board members as well as the corporate board, continuing to talk about through the processes of your retreat, of your handbook adoptions and some of those things. Obviously, I think the key challenge as we move forward is to make sure that our boards are terrific advocates for public education, that we keep them well informed, that we encourage their professional development, not only in terms of their roles and responsibilities as board members, but just in terms of their understanding of public education in general, so that they can be effective voices in our communities with our legislature as we talk about some of the key issues that we're facing over the next decade. So to me, that's probably the biggest challenge that we face.
Do you, Aaron, actually book board members to speak in different community forums? How do you handle that?
Well, I think we encourage them to speak in those community forums, but we also try to remind board members that when they're speaking, they're not necessarily representing the views of the corporate board, depending on the nature of the forum, and so they need to be thoughtful and careful about that. Of course, there are times when they do represent the board as a corporate body, and so that's a different conversation in that community forum. Of course, I think those opportunities are important. Like Oliver, we encourage our board members to be part of schools, be involved in learning walks, be at those community events and functions, and to really know what's happening in our schools so, again, they can be speaking effectively about that as advocates in our community for schools.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Oliver and Aaron, for sharing your experience in transforming your ever-changing school boards into more effective governing teams. Appreciate you taking the time. And anything in closing either of you'd like to say before we
well, it's been my pleasure. Enjoyed it very much. Oliver, appreciate hearing from you. Love the idea of the partnership teams, and thanks for sharing that idea.
Absolutely, Aaron. Hopefully we'll get a chance to meet someday.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, and I really appreciate your sharing your experience with us.
Thank you.
Take care.